Welcome back, everyone. Is here. And today I've got some r/Traumatize Them Back for you all. As per usual, I'll be reading the post, giving you my opinions, and I hope you do the same down in the comments below. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. Hey, real quick, by the way, GamerSupps is doing a 21% off for all partner codes, so if you want to get some GamerSupp for cheap, go use code KEYZ at checkout because the sale applies to all items site-wide, so definitely take advantage of that. Every purchase made using code KEYZ supports me directly, and I do mean directly. The sale starts February 21st at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and is going all the way until February 28th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Red-Bearded Bear. I told them I would do my best to die young. Disclaimer, English is not my first language, so forget me in advance if there will be some mistakes. Where I live, many old people have this nasty habit to complain about aging and how much it sucks to be old, to then advise younger people listening to them to never get old. A thing I always hated, because while they're just saying that being old sucks, it feels like they're telling young people to die. When the events I'm about to tell you happened, I was 14, and I had just lost my uncle, who fought cancer for 2 years and went under 2 major surgeries and several cycles of chemo and radiotherapy before passing. I was helping my aunt at her shop when this elderly lady came in to buy stuff. When trying, unsuccessfully, to open her bag to take out her wallet, she started her dumb tirade about how much it sucks to be old, that your body doesn't want to work as it should anymore, and yada yada yada, to then end it by telling me, "You must never get old!" I knew that she didn't really mean that I should just die, but my grieving 14-year-old brain was having none of it, so I told her in anger, "Well, I'll do my best to die young then." She started babbling in embarrassment and left the shop quickly after. I felt kinda bad and ashamed for snapping back at her like that, but being a grieving teen, I couldn't help but responding to her that way. Nowadays, I'd still get annoyed when old people tell me to never get old while complaining about aging. I don't snap back at them anymore. But whenever an elderly person tells me that, I politely remind them that they were indeed lucky to get old, because many unfortunate people never got the chance to do that. I do kind of feel bad for the old lady just doing the usual old person thing of "you should never get old," because every old person does that in a sarcastic, joking way. It's an inevitable thing that you can't avoid, and, that's just part of the joke. And then for her to repeat that joke that she had probably heard all of her life, but now she gets to say it, only for some witty 14-year-old to go, "Yeah, actually, I plan on dying young. Thank you." Now she has to waddle out of there with the fear of ever using that line ever again. I did not fuck a cat. What an interesting and completely non-conspicuous username to choose. Make a stupid comment, get reminded about not raising your children. For some context, I'm a straight cis woman, I'm just non-conforming. I have a pixie cut and I don't like to wear makeup. I don't have piercings and I don't like to wear dresses or stuff like that. I have been told that I was gay by a lot of people. I am not. My friends would joke that I was in a glass closet and I would play flirt with them. I've been called a butch, and even got more confessions from women than men. My biological mother is homophobic and isn't exactly happy that her only daughter looks and acts like the way I do. However, she doesn't have much say in it because I've lived with my aunt since I was 11 because she had a drug problem. She is clean now, but loves to make offhanded comments about my beliefs and lifestyle, even telling me that it's okay that I voted wrong, because her vote would cancel out mine. It was my first time voting. Thanks, Mom. This happened in my high school senior year. I was joking with my friends and one bet me $10 that I wouldn't wear a suit to prom. I was 17 and wanted some rockstar, so I agreed. I told my aunt and she didn't care. I went to the school for the suit because my family's pretty poor. I found a really cool light blue one and I looked awesome. I took prom photos and my aunt posted them on Facebook. Next thing I know, my mom is texting me, asking about what I was wearing. I'm gonna try and remember them because they're gone now. "Mom, what are you wearing?" "Me? Looks like a suit." "Is that what you're wearing to prom?" "Yup." "Why not a dress?" "I didn't want to wear a dress. I wanted a suit." "Well, girls wear dresses, boys wear suits." "There's a problem with your logic because I am a girl and I'm obviously wearing a suit." "Sorry I didn't raise you right." "Well, you didn't raise me, Mom. You let your sister do that for you." "Was it a little rude?" "Yes." I told my aunt and she shook her head, saying I should have ignored her. I know it wasn't exactly my mom's fault, and she made the best decision she would have made by giving my little brother and I to my aunt, and she had a hard life, and my biological father wasn't a good man to her, but I'm getting tired of her thinly veiled homophobia. Sorry for grammar mistakes, I'm doing this on a phone. Edit, all of you are very kind. I loved reading all of your own stories of suits to prom and the like. Also, your responses are very funny. I have read all of them. Thank you all for the kind words. For all women and men, be strong, be beautiful, and kick ass. Don't fit into a mold, make your own. Here at the Vault channel, we have a firm belief that family is what you make of it. You get to choose who's in your family. You're not required to include those who just happen to be related to you by blood because they demand to be in your life and they demand to be part of your family. You get to choose who you forge those connections with, so don't feel like you have to have specific connections with family that treat you negatively or poorly because they're related to you. You don't have to put up with that shit. Make them earn being a part of your family by being a decent human to you. Hosted by a deleted user. Neighbor wouldn't quit revving his engine. I made his backyard all but unusable until he quit. Petty revenge. There's a non-zero chance that this user deleted their account because they admitted to something illegal, so let's find out what happened. Last spring, my old neighbor, who was a saint, sold her house and moved away. The people that moved in were awful. The guy, who we'll call Pete, owns some sort of a new black Mustang that sounds like it has no muffler, and he revs it up and down the subdivision streets in the evenings, literally 5 days a week, when a lot of people, myself included, sit on their back porch and watch TV during the summer. It is relentless. Just chiming in real quick, while there is a good chance the Mustang might have some kind of exhaust mod on it, a lot of newer and modern Mustangs actually have an electronic kill switch that allows you to adjust the exhaust note and make it more quiet or more tolerable for your neighbors. Anyways, this guy also drives up and down the state highway that is on the other side of my house, doing the same thing, but louder because it's a 55-mile-per-hour speed limit. You can hear it for miles, and he has friends over regularly in the backyard, and they sit there on the weekends and some weeknights revving up the car. It truly is so loud that you cannot do anything but wait for him to be done. There was a big Facebook conversation in the HOA group, and a bunch of neighbors politely asked him not to do this. Pete's exact response? I pay a lot of money for this house, I'll do what I want in my own yard. And the streets are public. Well, I didn't like that. So here's what I did next, with a little context. Our subdivision has about 150 houses on about 300 acres. It's big. Most of the properties in the subdivision are between 1 to 4 acres in size. I have a 3-acre corner. Due to an agreed-upon land split/sale 10 years ago between the HOA, all neighbors within the vicinity, and the former owners, my next-door neighbor's house is on the smallest piece of property in the subdivision at just 0.45 acres. I've attached a stunning artistic representation here. Note the green borders. Those are all 10-foot privacy fences that are white vinyl. And note the little pentagon shape. That comes in handy later. The only side of Pete's house not bordered by somebody else's privacy fence is the side that my house is on. Hopefully I remember to put the kooky little drawing up because it is, definitely a lot of fences. Well, I know from 15 years of living here that anytime I have a fire on the side of the yard next to Pete's, the smoke is guaranteed to travel in the direction of Pete's house. I know this because I couldn't ever have a fire when my old neighbor was outside, as it would literally fill her backyard with smoke if ever the wood had even a hint of moisture in it. So, I moved my fire pit, about a dozen years ago, to the other side of my house and towards the road so that I could be a good neighbor. And, you know, Pete letting me know that he wouldn't quit making noise reminded me that I just loved having my fire pit right in the middle of my backyard. That's where the little pentagon is in the diagram above. It took me a single weekend to dig up the pavers and blocks, move them back to my preferred spot, and get myself a fire going in my new fire pit. I just needed to wait until Pete had people over. I made sure that the inaugural fire was a good one. Pete had friends over, it was a nice day, and so I started the fire. Got it just about started, and then I added all the wettest, grossest wood I could. And about 10 minutes later, Pete and all his friends were visibly upset by the stench, so they all went in. They came out a little bit later, I added more wet, nasty wood, and they went in again. I kept that up the entire day, and then I added a bunch of grass clippings to keep it going overnight. The next day, still smoldering, still smelling awful. I put out a Facebook post on the HOA website that let people know I'd be continuing to utilize my fire pit as often as possible, so they could bring me their lawn scraps. I had about 20 people respond in a few hours saying their clippings were all mine. I kept that fire going, and my dogs are good alarms, and they rush outside anytime anybody is in Pete's backyard, so I would hear the dog scramble, go out, and add more clippings. After about 3 weeks, Pete and his wife came out and very kindly asked me what was going on with the fire pit. She very politely informed me that her hair would smell like a campfire if she went into her backyard for any amount of time, and they could smell it coming into their house through their ductwork. He said I was making it hard for him to enjoy his backyard with his friends. They asked me if I could ease back with the fire because I probably didn't know that I was impacting so much of their home life. I looked at him and his wife, and I said that it was clear that sometimes we didn't recognize how big of an effect something could have on our neighbors until they told us about it. But then, I said, as objectively as possible, that I normally live by the same, I'll do what I want in my yard thought process as Pete does. I have a right to enjoy my yard. I looked at Pete dead in the eyes and said, and I know you support that because of how the conversation concluded about your car. Right, Pete? He looked at me like I scratched his favorite CD. He knew what I was doing, and his wife looked at him and it just dawned on her. She said she gets it, and we won't hear the Mustang anymore. I said, thanks. I took a gamble and put the fire out right after that. It was the right call. I haven't talked to them much since, and I'm not too concerned about that because I haven't heard the Mustang since either. So one thing that I will say is that if you are going to modify your car's exhaust, especially if you have a high-performance engine or just something that has the potential to be loud, definitely invest in getting like some sort of electronic exhaust valve, whether it's a valve muffler or just something that allows you at the flip of the switch, make your engine quiet so you can get out of your neighborhood and then feel free to crank that shit as loud as you want to when you're on the open roads. Your neighbors will drastically thank you for not making their mornings hell. Also, considering OP no longer hears the Mustang, my guess that OP does actually have control over the Mustang's exhaust note seems to be more and more likely. Which means that this guy heard that his neighbors were upset with how loud the car was, decided that he should still be able to have it as loud as he can possibly want, but didn't actually decide to start, making the car quieter until his neighbor got fed up with it and started making their house literally next to unlivable because of the smell of grass clippings. So, suddenly, the Mustang doesn't make any more noise. That's interesting. But in my opinion, it just seems to be human decency that if I found out that I was doing something that was making my neighbor's quality of life worse, I would immediately be trying to find ways to mitigate that and make it so that way I was no longer a nuisance neighbor, because no one wants that, and oftentimes you just end up in these retaliatory back and forths where, now no one's happy. Opossums are us. Hospital roommate called me ugly. I shut her up. When I was a sophomore in college, my appendix ruptured, and I spent a couple of weeks in the hospital off and on, dealing with various infections and surgery. During my first hospital stay, I shared a room with an older Russian woman who had just had a gastric bypass. I never said a word to her and just kind of kept to myself, watching TV and chatting with my mom when she came to visit. I felt kind of bad that I had to walk my IV pole past her to use the bathroom because I didn't want to disturb her, so I tried to be as quiet as possible and limit the number of trips I made. This lady had the habit of talking really loudly on the phone to her daughter, and since she'd heard me speaking English with my mom, I guess she assumed that I couldn't understand her. I had started learning Russian as a freshman, so I didn't understand everything she was saying, but I could gather bits and pieces. One night, she's on the phone with her daughter, and she says something to the tune of, "I don't have the room to myself anymore. I'm sharing it with this girl, and she's really ugly." Obviously, I don't look great because I had a ruptured appendix and was just trying to stay alive at that point. And I didn't really care what she thought of me. It just irked me that she thought it was okay to talk trash about me to her daughter in front of me just because she thought I couldn't understand her. Plus, I was bored and wanted the satisfaction of making her eat her words. So, the next time I was wheeling my IV pole past her to use the bathroom, I put on my sweetest smile and said, "Izvinite." Polite excuse me, in my best Russian accent. She didn't say anything to me, but she never called her daughter again while I was there because she knew I could understand her every bitchy word. It's stories like this that make me sad that I'm not bilingual or never was able to pick up another language. And trust me, I've tried. I'm just completely incapable of, actually learning a second language, and I barely even know my first language. I mean, hell, you guys have heard that of mispronunciations or fuck-ups I have per video. I am envious of the opportunity to hear someone talking shit about me in another language and being able to pipe right back at them with their own language. It is a joy in life I will unfortunately never be able to experience. And I've tried learning both French and Spanish and a little bit of Italian. A bit of a long story with that one. But yeah, I mostly wanted to learn those ones because they have very common root origins, and I figured it'd be a walk in the park to just kind of like, learn the three of them because they're kind of sibling languages, and I'd be able to pick up one thing from another and apply it to the next. But, ADHD lets me pick something up really good for the first week, and then a week later, I'm trying to learn piano, and then the next week after that, I'm, learning other shit. Can't keep with the hobby. And embarrassingly enough, it's not that it's too hard, it's just that I lose interest and I forget to practice it. I'm sure fellow ADHD goobers will probably honestly understand the exact problem of the jack of all trades, master of nothing, because that's what ends up happening. You get okay at a lot of random shit, but never really good at anything. J. Backman. Abusive ex refused to move out, so I did it for her in the most inconvenient way possible. I had broken up with my ex about a year prior to this event, but she wouldn't move out. One excuse after another for a solid year, until one day, amidst yet another argument, she finally admitted her plan was to stay indefinitely, and threatened to claim domestic abuse if I did anything about it. That weekend, she decided to go out for one of her weekend vacations with a girlfriend, so I took advantage of the 48 hours I had and got to work reserving a storage unit and rented a moving truck. I worked around the clock, loading that truck multiple times, only sleeping a few hours that entire weekend. She had hoarding tendencies that I had long turned a blind eye to. Had to pick my battles, and it had gotten pretty far out of control. Not only did I make dozens of trips, but the storage unit itself was almost too small for it all. It was truly amazing how much crap she had managed to pack floor to ceiling in multiple rooms, closets, and the garage, despite living in the same house together for so long. I made sure her laptop was the very first thing in the storage unit, all the way in the back corner, followed by all her clothes, so many fucking clothes, then furniture, then all the meaningless, horrid junk. By the time I was done, that storage unit was packed floor to ceiling to the point I had to really play Tetris the last couple of loads in there, just to get the door shut. She was right at the end of a semester of school and not only needed the laptop first thing the next week, she was also planning on leaving for a cross-country road trip to visit family. And everything she needed for that was at the very back. From what I heard, it took her and her friend a better part of the week to find that laptop and repack the storage unit. She missed some important deadlines at school and delayed her family trip by a whole week, which messed up other plans and wasted a few paid time off days at work to boot. The best part came months later. You see, when she first came back from that little weekend vacation, I had asked her to sign a receipt to receive the key to the storage unit. She immediately refused, threw a fit, and tried to steal my dog. Failed. Tried breaking into my house while I was gone, then came back hours later with about 6 cops in her wake. To this day, I don't know what lies she told them to get that entourage, but after I explained my side of the story, they realized it was just a civil matter and quickly left. The receipt I asked her to sign was simple enough in that I offered to pay for the storage unit for 6 months if she signed it that day, but since she didn't, I removed my card from the account and put the unit in her name. Only problem was, the card she put on file with them was an authorized user card linked to my account, which I promptly canceled. So then, she missed enough payments on the storage unit that they locked her out and she was never able to get the rest of her stuff before they presumably auctioned it all off. So a question that I had about this post, which was also asked by Damia Sugar, was, You do know in the States she could sue you for self-held eviction, which is illegal. And OP responds, yeah, but she's lazy, so I was banking on her not following through, and she never did. My state also has exemptions for domestic abuse situations. At that point, I honestly didn't care either way. I just needed her out of my life ASAP. So I just went down a massive rabbit hole to try to figure out, if what he did was even legal in his state, and the only states I could find were Arkansas, Colorado, and Texas, and most of those states just have provisions in place for protections of evicting someone who's a victim of domestic violence, not evicting your partner who's abusing you domestically, or in this case, I guess it is a form of abuse to claim that you're going to claim domestic abuse in order to be able to stay at the house. And because I doubt that he probably never gave her a written eviction notice, it gets complicated. However, if they are in one of those states, it does make sense why she would want to claim domestic abuse in order to stay in there, because in some states, if she did take this action, he would have to move out of his own place, and she would then be able to stay in there. So it is fucking complicated. Holy hell. But just in case if any of you are going through something similar where you're dealing with an abusive partner, or ex-partner in this case, from my research, the main recommendation that I received is to normally file some form of TRO or civil protection order or go to a judge and see what kind of domestic violence protections you have in place, and provide a 30-day eviction notice. Make sure the police and courts are aware, so that way if anything does happen and things escalate, you will at least have that kind of protection in place. Different states will have different laws, so make sure you look up into them and see what your options are, but definitely don't do what OP did. While this is a very satisfying bit of revenge and probably certainly caused a bit of trauma on the way there, try to avoid doing this because there's a lot of legal ramifications that you could be hit with, and I don't want any of you guys to suffer because of deciding to follow a story you heard on the Vault channel. Legitimate myth 3816. Dude wouldn't just let me play my game in peace. Today I was in the lobby of my physical therapist's office, which doubles as the lobby for the urgent care in the same building. I had gotten there early, as I usually do, because I'm anxious about traffic making me late and missing the grace period for appointments. So I pulled my Switch out of the bag I have on the front of my walker, and I'm playing Hello Kitty Island Adventure with the sound off, minding my business and bothering absolutely nobody. Some dude checks in and sits right next to me despite there being enough chairs for like 3 seats between everyone in there with some left over. This dude immediately starts trying to chat with me about the weather, the snow we just got, how long the wait for urgent care is, and whatever else he could come up with. I was giving one-word answers and never looking up from my Switch because I didn't come here in the middle of the day to talk to some guy who leans over to breathe directly on strangers while waiting for his appointment for urgent care. Eventually, he looks at the screen of my Switch and makes a face before saying in a condescending tone, "Isn't that a kid's game? You aren't a little girl." Rage filled me. Because I'm just trying to mind my business, and he just won't leave me alone. So I said, to the best of my memory, "Look, dude, I moved here as a decently fit person and was excited to start meeting people in a new city where I knew no one, when I injured my back. Now I'm in a city where I have no friends and no family. My only in-person companions are my doctors, my physical therapist, and the door guys for my building. And I'm in constant pain. I've been in constant pain for 3 months now. I went from being reasonably healthy and able to needing a walker to get across my 400 square foot apartment to use the bathroom. So, you'll excuse me if the only thing I have the mental energy to focus on that keeps me from losing my mind is a silly little kid's game. I'm so sorry we can't all do whatever super interesting things it is you do in your spare time." He quickly moves seats. So for me, it really depends on my state of mind if I want to have a conversation with someone while I'm waiting for something, because sometimes I just want to do my own thing, and sometimes I am open for a little bit of conversing with a stranger. When I want to just listen to music and vibe and not have to deal with that, it is definitely frustrating when someone's trying to have a conversation with me and I just want to listen to music and just vibe. And I don't want to be like confrontational or mean to them, so I'm kind of stuck in a catch-22 where it's either I'm an asshole and I just cut them off, or I tolerate the conversation and make them feel good. It kind of sucks because I'm very socially awkward at times and I don't want to make someone feel uncomfortable or bad. But in the case of OP, it sounds like the straw that broke the camel's back was them kind of like low-key being condescending and insulting towards them. So I definitely understand that being the tipping and snapping point. Actually, recently when I was flying back home from the holiday travels, I actually had a really cool conversation with a guy that was a defense attorney from Idaho who was, you know, just kind of this older dude, lived a life of just kind of like serving the people and dealing with prosecutors who are more interested in conviction numbers than actually getting the truth of it. And, you know, his entire job was pretty much being there for the people. And it was super cool talking with him about his, you know, prior cases and things he had gone through. And at first, this was an instance where I just wanted to put my headphones in, but the dude was really interesting to talk to, and he had a lot of really cool stories from just his time as being a defense attorney. It was super cool. So sometimes it is worth the dice roll of talking with a stranger, but other times you just want to listen to your music and vibe, or play Hello Kitty Island Adventure. And it's definitely frustrating when someone doesn't pick up on the subtle social cues of, I don't want to tell you to stop talking to me, but I really want to play Hello Kitty Island Adventure right now. So, please stop. Hey, welcome to the outro. Don't forget GamerSupps is doing 20% off for all partner codes, so if you use code Oz at checkout, you get 21% off. And yes, it does directly support me. I really do mean that. Again, the sale is going on until February 21st at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, all the way to February 28th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And of course, not to mention, GamerSupps has more than just caffeine products. They have caffeine-free, they actually have ramen noodles, they have mouse pads, posters, t-shirts, their t-shirts are actually really comfortable, and just a lot of really cool stuff. Plus, non-waifu stuff as well if you don't want to be wearing a degenerate shirt around, so there is that as well. They've actually got some really cool anime girl designs that I'm actually a really big fan of. So again, if you want to take advantage of the 21% off and get yourself a nice comfy shirt, this is like the perfect time to do it. Use code Oz at checkout because again, it does directly support me.